I turned one browser check on. Then the screen showed a badge I'd never seen before. Not a generic cookies warning, a red, loud indicator labeled AI surveillance signal. It didn't say someone is watching. It said the browser had found a chain. Observation turned into automation. And the worst part was how normal it looked. Like permissions you thought you'd denied, settings you thought you'd simplified, scripts that only looked like page loading. I want to show you what that badge meant, what my browser revealed, and where the privacy break really happens. First, set the mood. I had my phone under that scanner light, the kind that turns every service into evidence. I wasn't trying to scare myself with conspiracy vibes. I was trying to read the proof. On my desk, a browser window, a privacy dashboard, and then this red label appearing like a system alert. The badge stayed subtle in the corner, but it made the whole test feel different. It implied automation, not curiosity. It implied a workflow: detect, correlate, score, and pass the result onward. Browsers aren't passive observers. They are sensor networks for your own habits. They log what loads, what touches storage, what asks for permission, what fingerprints your device, and what tries to map your session to a profile. When certain defenses are missing, tracking protections are off, block third-party cookies isn't enough, extensions are allowed, or permissions are inconsistently granted, the browser can surface the exact moment observation becomes profiling automation. That's the stakes. Not someone saw me. It's the system learned how to treat me as a repeatable unit. So here's the evidence framing. I ran a baseline browser test. Not a weird hack. Just a normal visit to a page that loads lots of third-party content, ads, analytics, and embedding widgets. In the results view, most identifying text was redacted. The browser intentionally blurred what I would call personally identifying details, but it still left the mechanism visible. What I could see were unreadable properties where names should be, request metadata, storage access events, and tracker classification labels. The important part wasn't the specific website, it was the pattern. Now the pipeline reveal. The browser didn't simply list trackers, it showed a sequence. Step 1, fingerprinting and telemetry. In the network summary, device-leaning calls showed up early. Script loads that query environment signals and compute a stable-ish identifier. You could feel it in the timeline. Requests firing almost immediately after the first page paint. Step 2, identity correlation. After that, multiple domains started sharing session-linked signals through cookies and storage. Even when third-party cookies were limited, other storage paths still appeared. Step 3, risk scoring handoff. A downstream request contained fields the browser labeled as classification output or risk context. The exact endpoints weren't AI named everything, but the behavior was. The browser saw a decision payload being requested and used. And then came the automation moment. One browser action triggered multiple network checks. I didn't just scroll. I clicked a consent-related element and then interacted with a page control. That single action refreshed state across storage. The browser responded with a burst. Permission checks for notifications or location prompts, storage reads and writes, and script reevaluations. It looked like ordinary web page behavior until the AI surveillance signal badge appeared. The key detail: it wasn't triggered by a human choosing an option. It was triggered by the browser detecting that the session now met criteria for an automated workflow. In practical terms, the browser treated my normal behavior as input to an automated stage. So where does privacy break? Compare what the browser tells you versus what it silently shares. The consent banner told me what I already expected. Allow analytics, customize ads, manage preferences. It was polite, readable, and it asked for a choice. Meanwhile, the browser's internal indicators showed actual collection behaviors. Requests that still fired before or during consent state changes, storage objects being accessed, and measurement scripts loading from third-party origins. Consent often controls what you can see, but collection can be driven by what the page already learned about you. Your device signals, your prior session structure, your timing patterns, your click outcomes. The break is the gap between a user-facing choice and the behind-the-scenes workflow. And that workflow is the hidden power system. Mechanism matters more than names. In the browser's ecosystem, the same building blocks show up in many industries: measurement vendors, ad tech stacks, and safety or fraud-oriented tools. When the browser detects a risk context payload and sees it being used to gate content, redirect flows, or adjust thresholds, you can connect it to real-world operator incentives. Marketing tech wants predictive profiling: who you are likely to be, what you might buy, what message should reach you. Enforcement and safety tooling wants risk prediction: who might be suspicious, who might be bot-like, who should be challenged. Different goals, same mechanism. Observation converted into a score and then passed downstream. I kept the test focused on the logic, rather than blaming specific people. But the effect was clear. The system wasn't only watching. It was converting my normal browsing into a repeatable surveillance workflow. Then I ran the dark practical test. I did a second check using stronger blocking, privacy mode on, tracker blocking enabled, and I removed risky permissions. The baseline run had shown the red badge. The second run reduced the obvious noise: fewer cross-domain requests, fewer storage reads that looked like persistent tracking, and a calmer timeline. But the important part, it didn't make everything disappear. Some scripts still loaded from first-party contexts, and some telemetry still occurred through measurements that were framed as necessary. The browser still displayed classification-like markers, just with fewer downstream handoff signs. So the failure mode felt inevitable, not because you're doomed, but because the automation pipeline can degrade gracefully. You get less exposure, not zero visibility. Now, what did my browser reveal when it turned tracking into AI surveillance automation? It revealed the automation moment through an indicator, AI surveillance signal, paired with evidence in the logs, bursts after user actions, storage and permission churn, fingerprinting adjacent telemetry early in the load, correlation across multiple domains, and a downstream request carrying risk or classification context. That's the click you can't unsee. Your browser isn't just a window. It's a sensor that can show you when your session has been transformed into an input for machine decisions. Before you leave, here's a visibility checklist you can do right now. No heroics, just concrete steps. First, open your browser's permission panel and review notifications, location, camera, and microphone. If anything is allow, change it to ask or block. Second, check storage and third-party access settings. Don't rely only on blocked third-party cookies. Look for cross-site storage controls and tracking protection. Third, remove or review extensions. A single analytics or shopping helper extension can create a new tracking surface. Fourth, use a network inspection view. Look for third-party origins and count request groups. If the network timeline spikes after consent clicks, that's a behavior worth investigating. Fifth, think about DNS and privacy. If your browser uses a custom DNS or encrypted DNS, verify it's on. It won't stop everything, but it reduces what infrastructure learns. Finally, watch for indicators like that red badge. If your browser exposes an AI surveillance signal, treat it as evidence, not as fear. I want to end with a question for you. What browser behavior do you want explained next? Automation triggering, the scoring stage, or the enforcement handoff? Comment what you've noticed on your own screens. The badge or the network pattern, the permission prompt difference, the storage items count change, or the moment the requests multiplied. Because the next breakthrough isn't a new browser feature. It's us learning to read what the browser is already telling us.